What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another YouTube video. We're here with Mike, the used book god. Mike, the used book guy on YouTube. He sells all sorts of media, books, DVDs, video games, whatever media it is, you name it, he sells it. So, Mike, super genuine guy. You definitely got an awesome following with you. So, I just want to welcome you to the channel. Thanks so much for being here.
Hey, thanks for inviting me on here. You see one of my cats hopped up in the background over here,
Is that
Nico.
Diana or is that?
No, that's Nico. We got 4 cats. Diana's all black, Nico's black
Okay.
and white, Zazu's orange and white, and Rosie is a brown tabby. But yeah, I'm excited to be here, hang out with you. You kind of do, my business just in a different way. So it's always good to be around, like-minded people, even if you're doing something a little different. I don't think you can put any kind of value on having somebody like yourself, like, hey, if I have a problem, then just shoot you a message and it gets fixed right away. So I'm excited to be here and see what questions you were going to throw my way.
Awesome. Let's get right into it. All right. So the first question, it's actually not a question. I just want to know if you could, or, if my audience is a little bit different than yours, like you just mentioned. So I'm curious, for the people who don't actually know who you are, what would be like your 30-second elevator pitch to them? What exactly do you do?
I go to thrift stores. I buy media in bulk from other people off Craigslist. I have library relationships where I get all their donations for free, and I just sell on Amazon and eBay, and that's my, what I do for a full-time job. I do have a storage unit because I live on a 3rd floor. You can't, it's a little heavy lifting here living on the 3rd floor, but I do have a storage unit that I run out of that's only $100 a month. So
Awesome.
that's what I do for a living.
Very cool. So I'm curious, this is something that's somewhat new to you. I know that you started posting videos about a year ago, but I'm sure you were probably in the reselling game a little bit before that. But like I said, I know this wasn't your first main gig. So if you could just give us a little background, like what were you doing before? What was the younger Mike doing? And then also what sort of transition or led you into starting to sell stuff online?
I worked in retail my whole life. I did a little bit of security jobs, Toys R Us, Kmart, switched over to CVS to be a store manager. And I was there for 10 years. I worked in CVS when I was in high school, and I was like, oh, I'll go back. Why not? The pay was decent. And you just get to a point where, like, I don't know, man, it sucks when you're running on somebody else's time. I mean, anybody that's kind of worked a job where you got to be available 24/7, you start missing out on a lot, right? And I don't even have kids or anything. I got cats and Deb, my wife. So it's like, I felt like I was missing out on so much because I got to be available around the clock for a job that I'm really going to, and I'm not happy, right? You get paid, it's decent, but it's like there's got to be more to life than this. And I just started reselling anything and everything. Like, back in the day, like even talked about like Bonafide Hustler, like Steve Breaker when they were all little babies, right? Like they were like just starting on YouTube, and I was just selling stuff to make money, and it just turned into what it is today. I kind of just found my own way, I guess.
That's awesome. How long ago did you actually find it? Because you mentioned those guys are babies. And I remember back in the day, Bonafide Hustler, College Picker, Steve Rakin. I can't remember, like, I can't put a number on how many subscribers they had. I was actually part of the Green Room, which that was something back in 2017. So I'm wondering, how far back do you go?
Yeah, I'm back there. I remember the Green Room was like one of the big things, and those guys kind of like were kind of like what we are today almost. I mean, we're not as close knit as they are like yet, but just a small like group of guys that are have we all want to kind of get out of the rat race and make money reselling, and whether it's one way or another, like we're all about it. But yeah, I remember the Green Room, and it was pretty funny. And looking back, like talking with some of the guys now, it's like, holy smokes, like we've come so far.
I 100% agree. And, it's funny to me. I was talking to my wife just the other day. I was like, man, one thing I really regret is I should have started a YouTube channel back then. And I think a lot of it was the fear of like what other people would think about me, or, it was things that were in my head when I should have just started. So I'm curious for you as well. I mean, going back to 2016, like that's a while ago when you started selling. So what was sort of motivation for you to start a YouTube channel, to start posting?
I mean, YouTube takes time, honestly. I mean, unless you have an editor and everything. So I was reselling well before I started YouTube, and I got to a point where like when I niched down into books and the money I was making, and like I don't know, it's like changed my life. So I'm like, hey, if I can help somebody else get out of the rat race and do something that really isn't hard work in comparison to other things, other aspects of life, like sure, why not? But I'm in the same boat as you. Like I'm just thinking to myself, like, who is going to watch me, right? I got like the corniest jokes and everything. And I joke with Deb about it all the time. Like, I don't even understand how I got here, but here we are, right? Let's just keep running with it. But yeah, I was in the same boat as you. I guess I just got to a point where nobody else really was doing like specific book, like kind of information out there. Sure, you had like Romer and Rakin was doing a little bit here and there, but it wasn't like solely focused on that. And like back in the day, there was no like Amazon tutorials for media or like how to do things. Like I remember doing my first box, it took me like 6 hours. And Deb jokes about it to this day. She's like, there's no way this is going to work. It's going to take you 6 hours a box. And I was just
Oh
like,
my
because
gosh.
there was nobody out there that was kind of putting the information that's out there today. Now it's readily available. You could become like an expert in a month if you just binge content.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like so much more content now than there even was back then. I remember sending my first shipment from the college picker made a video, I think, inside the green room. So that was like exclusive content. And I remember that being super daunting as well, like the first shipment. And it's funny that we could all go out for drinks now and laugh about like how easy it really is. But when you're first starting it the first time, it actually is pretty hard. And I think one thing we both remind ourselves is that as we go throughout this journey of selling, we think back, or we should remember that actually there is quite a bit of nuance to it. And there's a lot of stuff that you got to learn along the way. And as you do learn those things, then obviously it becomes way easier, so much that it's second nature. You don't even think about it anymore. But I'm curious, segueing that into your YouTube channel, I think it definitely is more geared towards that person who probably is in the 9 to 5, is in a rat race. They probably don't know a lot about eBay or Amazon. They want to get started selling stuff. But I'm sure you've seen a lot of people come to your channel and also, succeed, but then also some people fall off. I'm kind of curious, what are some of the major hurdles that you see most people kind of will look at and actually not go over, like they'll actually stop there?
See, the problem is what we just talked about. The content's out there, so people almost expect things to be kind of like handed to them on a silver platter, right? There's
Yeah,
no the best way to learn is just doing it yourself, and that's just the
right,
unfortunate truth. I could sit here and tell you how to do something a million times, and you can go do it, but you're not going to retain that information if I'm not around the next time you need to do it. And I think it
right,
works both ways when it comes to that. Yeah, it's good that the knowledge is out there. There's walkthroughs for every software, everything, but it's also bad because people have in their mindset that they need their hand held every little step of the way instead of just trying to learn something themselves. And I think that's kind of the big hurdle with today's kind of newer Amazon sellers is they everything's out there, but they don't
hmm,
want to take kind of the initiative to learn it themselves or even try it themselves. Like
right.
most of the times when people come to me with a question, it's not like, hey, Mike, I tried to do a shipment and I broke something along the way. They haven't even took the steps to try to create a shipment before coming with the
Right.
question.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that there's got to be that self-starter aspect of it if you actually want to do it. There's the difference between consuming content and then actually taking action on it. So I completely agree with that. When it comes to like thrift stores and going to library stores specifically, like I guess one of the main competitive advantages is just being able to go out all the time, right? Being able to source inventory, like having a route that you go every single day, hitting different library stores, different Goodwills, things like that. But I'm curious, you being someone who's super genuine, that can really, I would say, very easily smooch on someone, not in a bad way at all, but like someone who's very you're a people person, someone who's very genuine that people like. What are some of the competitive advantages that might offer when it comes to going to thrift stores or building a relationship with a library, stuff like that?
Every single person that asks you what you're doing, even if you're not going out to thrift stores, you should tell them exactly what you're doing. Why are you going to try to hide, something that you're doing? It just doesn't make
Right.
sense. And you would be
Hmm.
surprised at some of the reactions you get when you tell somebody, hey, I sell media for a living. I mean, you're not going to tell somebody, hey, I sell old crusty books, right? You're going to kind of spin it a little bit and kind of make it seem like a little bit better than what it is, right? Hey, I have
Yeah.
a media business. I save books from winding up in the landfill, getting destroyed, things like that. But every conversation you have can always lead to some kind of relationship down the road. And that's what I realized. Like, if you're kind of doing, boots on the ground, thrift stores, you got to build relationships if you want
Right.
to survive in this. You can't just be that person who has their blinders on, goes into a thrift store, scans everything, doesn't say a word to nobody, and leaves. I don't think that business model is feasible anymore with selling media on Amazon. I think you have to kind of grow
Yeah.
relationships, get in the back rooms, work with libraries. There's so many outside the box ways you can kind of develop your business anymore. They're just going into thrift stores and being a loner, kind of not talking to anybody. I don't think it's going to work here, especially the way Amazon's been changing lately.
Yeah, I'm curious. Do you think that that sort of aspect of being a people person, talking to people, developing relationships, do you think that's location dependent? Like, do you think it matters where you live for something like that to work? Or is it just kind of like a universal law that, hey, you treat people kind, you be nice, you tell people what you do, people are going to pay it forward for you?
I think, I mean, it goes both ways, right? Because there's different parts of the, country world where, it's a little bit rougher around the edges, right? If I'm trying to go into a thrift store in Philly, it's going to be a completely different conversation. And,
Right.
out here in the middle of central Pennsylvania where people are kind of a little bit laid back, maybe it's a church thrift store versus like a Goodwill or Salvation Army. So I think
Right.
it is a little bit location dependent, but at the end of the day, if you can just relate with people and be straight up with
Mhm.
them, you're going to get the same thing back.
Yeah, it's really good. And it's interesting that you say people come to you with questions all the time, and a lot of the times those questions you see them as like being kind of so far away from where they kind of need to be for you to help them already because they haven't even taken any of those initial steps to really for you to help them at all. So my channel is I think more niche in that it's like I feel like a lot of the people end up like a lot of beginners would end up maybe funneling to a sort of channel like mine where it's like you don't even go to thrift stores anymore. You just read Keepa charts and do data analysis and then find stuff that's undervalued on eBay or Amazon, flip it on Amazon. So I feel like it's definitely more of like a niche sort of person. But I'm curious, when people come to me, they're always like, how do I get, if they are someone who has no skin in the game, like they never sold anything, and they come to me and they always go, how should I get started with this? And I'm always like, dude, you should just go check out Mike the Book Guy because it's like you're in that stage where you don't know what you don't know yet. And I feel like the easiest way to get started is with books and media because the mistakes that you're making are so cheap. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on media in general. Is that the best place to start with Amazon, or would you recommend starting with something else?
It really depends. I mean, like if you have, so just take a person, for example, brand new, they only have, 2 thrift stores in their area. You're kind of, your business is going to be chokehold pretty quick here. Like, so kind of
Right.
what you do is where, it kind of, it's not easy, but it's ease of access for a lot of people. Maybe they don't have a vehicle, maybe they have, some kind of
Right.
physical limitation where they can't lift media because media is heavy. There's a lot of older people that do this, and
Right.
carrying a 40-pound box of books to UPS it can be a daunting task. So like there's kind of a fine line. You got to figure out what works for you in your area, because something that might work for me over here might not work for you over there. You don't have the thrift stores, you don't have the libraries. It's kind of location based when it comes to how you want to model your business, but I don't think there's any wrong way to do it. But I just feel
Yeah.
like you have to commit to one or the other. I don't think like you could kind of halfway do thrifting and then halfway kind of do the Amazon to Amazon flips. I feel like you got to be focused at some point here. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe starting out just to kind of get a feel for like, what do you want to do, right? You rather
Yeah.
source at home, you rather go to the thrift stores. You get a
Yeah.
feel for it, but once you find something, you stick with it, focus, and just stay with it. I mean, the shiny object syndrome is like that's the reseller's biggest thing here. It's like on to the next fancy thing. And it's people just keep going instead of staying in your lane and being great at that one thing and making the most you can.
Maybe that is gonna kind of void the point I'm gonna make here. But when I watch your channel, I feel like a lot of times you're thrifting, you're going to library sales, you're doing free book pickups. You've got even a magnet on the side of your car so that people can call you up. You've got, little business cards to hand out. You let everyone know what you do, which is great. Don't think I've really, I mean, I haven't watched every one of your videos, but I haven't really heard you ever talk about Facebook Marketplace, OfferUp, Craigslist. But do you use any sort of those platforms to find stuff locally?
I am heavily into Craigslist. I've probably made $20,000 plus off Craigslist pickups. Nextdoor, believe it or not,
Next
this is
door.
another location thing. Nextdoor, I've yet to get a single hit on Nextdoor. I've posted it month after month, but somebody like yourself could say, well, I go on Nextdoor and there's a million different things I could possibly buy. For me around
Right.
here, it just sucks. Facebook, I didn't have a Facebook until recently, so I did do a bulk buy off Facebook. It was 28 banana boxes of CDs and DVDs for $100. So
Okay.
that was my first ever Facebook one, but Craigslist is kind of my main one. And then like, believe it or not, local flyers. So I have like a Canva that I print out, and it's got like the little sheets you can rip off the bottom, and I just put them
Uh-huh.
up at all the gas stations, laundromats, and it works great. I mean, word of mouth and just having stuff out there like that. I know people like who uses Craigslist still. Like so many people watching it's going to be like, I don't use Craigslist. Well, you'd be amazed at how many people do. But like I said, it's location specific. Maybe Craigslist is good for me and it sucks for you, but Nextdoor is good for you and it sucks for me. But they're free, so why not just have them out there on everything?
That's cool. And obviously, you're not a brick and mortar store. None of us are if we're selling on Amazon, but I kind of get that vibe. I'm not really sure exactly the city that you live in, if it's a smaller city or bigger city, like how tight knit or how big it is. But do you feel like there's that vibe in town? Like, dude, that's Mike. That's the used book guy. Like, does everyone know?
I mean, I don't know. I'm in basically in Harrisburg, so it's the capital of Pennsylvania. It's a pretty big city,
Okay.
but it's kind of like, I mean, it's not the nicest city. It's not the nicest area. There are other people that do like bulk book pickups and everything. I know I've run into them on my channel. I really rarely run into people like while I'm outsourcing. I don't think there's really that much competition here for me, which is a good thing. But I mean, at the end of the day, I just try to like focus on myself. And I've had people reach out to me like, hey, you picked up books from, Pete, a month ago. I'm his friend, John, and I got some books I want to get rid of too. So like, like you said, it's all about how you treat people, and you have to build this business word of mouth based. You got to have a reputation. Everybody has a reputation.
Yeah.
Whether it's good or bad, that's your choice. But you got to just be out there and just tell people what you're doing, and always have like a good interaction with every single person every single time, even if it's somebody that's coming off like a jerk. Happens all the time, you know. Recently, I ran into a few different scanners in stores, and the one dude was just a complete jerk. And I'm just like, I mean, it is what it is. Not everybody's going to be a
Yeah.
happy, friendly conversation, but always say, kill them with kindness, right? Working in retail, kill them with kindness. It could be the most miserable person. You tell them, oh, have a great day. I hope your weekend's great. And you know, it eats them up inside because they just want to be miserable.
Yeah, that's funny. I'm curious, when it comes to used book pickups, I know one of the things that holds up a lot of people is the way that you frame what they do or what you do. And I know you're super honest, you're super genuine about it. But I'm curious, what would you say is the best way to frame it? Like, I can see someone, they post a free book pickup and they're like, they're scared of what the person's get asked what they're doing with the books. And they don't necessarily want to say, oh, I'm going to sell all your books online and make hundreds of and thousands of dollars, right? And the reality is also that a lot of the books that they get are going to be worthless anyways. And it's like they're like, oh, I'm just gonna go donate all the books you give me. So what would you say is like the best sort of framing when it comes to being successful at book pickups?
You have to basically make people feel like their books are going to wind up in somebody else's hands that are going to appreciate it.
Okay.
They're not going to wind up. I mean, I would hope nobody, you know, that watches my channel or anything just throws the books out. I
Yeah.
mean, none of us should be doing that. So basically, we're a lot of the times it's the service, not so much the books. Like people are moving, or it's,
Right.
you know, maybe somebody that needs the extra money. So yeah, you know, you might feel weird going in there, and if they ask you what you're doing, I always tell everybody, listen, I have a media business that I run. Provides for my family full time. This is the only thing I do. And I make sure all the books don't wind up in the trash or any kind of landfill like that. And
Cool.
if you're just personable with people and you're just straight up with them and you're not throwing the books out, right? I can't say I can't come to your house. I'm like, hey Joji, yeah, I'm here to get your books. I don't throw them out. And
Yeah.
then you're driving around on trash day and you drive by my house and you see all your books sitting out for the trash. Like you can't be that type of person, and you
Right.
shouldn't like try to kind of like finagle your way into those situations. You should have an outlet for your duds. You should be donating
Right.
them to local churches, local, you know, community centers, things like that, or even just donating them back to a thrift store. That even that's an option. But you just got to be straight up with people. And if you're just genuine, like, hey, I have a business and that I run. This is what I do full time. I provide for my family. Nobody's ever going to be like, okay, well, why are you taking these if you're providing for your family, right? It's like, I
Yeah.
mean, that's how I spend it.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to transition a little bit to YouTube because obviously I'm in the YouTube game like you. You're someone who's way far ahead of me. And I'm like, that's Mike up there. Not that I'm comparing myself to you at all. I'm just saying that you're an inspiration to me because you're somebody who started a year ago. I started obviously well after that, but someone who's had a lot of success, and I want to in some way figure out what worked for you, right? Because I also want to grow as well for myself. So I'm curious, when you look at all your YouTube titles, a lot of them are not necessarily like the typical like SEO, like search engine optimized, but what they are very much like are is geared towards like human psychology and people who come to your channel who's like the everyday person, not in a bad way, just like the everyday person is like, oh, that's an interesting point. But then if you think about the title in terms of the grand scheme of your video, like that thing that you talk about might be in different locations. Like you might not know exactly where it is. So I'm curious, is that something that is intentional that you do, or is that something that just happens and it is what it is?
The only thing I'm intentional about on YouTube is not being clickbaity and not coming off as something I'm not. So even if it takes me, you know, another 10 years to get to 5,000, 10,000 subscribers, I think there's two different kind of reselling YouTube channels out there. You have the people that are like, oh my God, can you believe what I found? And like, it's the most clickbaity, cheesy thing ever. And then you have the people that are kind of genuine and the title is related to what they're talking about. They don't have this oh my God face on every thumbnail. And I rather go that route. It's a slower, you know, it's a slower pace. I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
if I had every one of my titles be clickbaity, and you know, I'm sure I would have a lot more subscribers. But I don't know. It's like I don't. It's not me. And I've done it before. Like I have like maybe 5 videos on the channel where I just did stupid like oh my God faces, or like it's the end, Amazon's over, and like those videos get the most views. But it's like I don't replicate it because I just did it for fun, because I know like the drama is going to bring the views, and it's just like it's silly. I rather go slow. I'm going to get, you know, the person I can relate to on the channel, and not somebody that's
Yeah.
just trying to be like, oh, I'm going to make $1 million off this item if I can find the item they talk about. So it's a little bit
Right.
different for me with YouTube. I don't rely on it as like an income source for me.
Right.
I just want it to kind of be like a foundation of where somebody can go have a conversation with me. I've responded to every single YouTube comment since I started. I
Crazy.
wish I could like keep a count, but it's got to be at least 5,000 comments minimum. So
Yeah.
it's like, just want somewhere where somebody can go brand new, ask a question, watch a video that isn't clickbaity or setting some kind of unrealistic expectation when it comes to thrifting. And YouTube will just grow the way it grows for me. I don't really have any kind of expectations or goals for it, honestly.
That's cool. I'm curious, even though you don't have, like you said, expectation or goals, or you're not trying to necessarily monetize everyone that comes to your channel, do you find YouTube is actually a motivation for like you to go out and thrift?
Not really.
Not really.
No, most of the time it's me just trying to keep my Amazon inventory where it needs to be,
Gotcha.
and there's plenty of times when I go out and thrift, and I'm like, I don't even feel like recording today, and I just won't record at that store. I probably should just so I have a backlog of like content, but it's really not a motivation for me. I kind of just try to keep things, like I have my one thrifting video, I got my podcast video, and then Monday's just like my weekend sales kind of talk video. And sure, I could probably, do five videos a week if I wanted to, but I think three's enough. They're all kind of have their own little, place on the channel. And it makes it a little bit easier for me because yeah, we're doing YouTube, but we also have businesses and the businesses
Yep.
make the money. If
Yep.
YouTube's going to pay me 20 grand a month, sure, I'll do YouTube every single day, but that's not the case. So like,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people kind of get caught up and miss the fact that yeah, we're on YouTube. Yeah, we're responding. We have our Discords, our
Hmm.
coaching, everything like that. It's like, yeah, but we still have a business that has to operate in every aspect behind the scenes.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Let's transition a little bit back to the media part of the business. So I know if you're an Amazon seller, like I said, I get not a lot of people, I get some people come to my channel, haven't sold anything on Amazon, and they want to start what I do. I'm sure you have a lot of people who come to your channel, no idea what Amazon, like how to sell on Amazon. They want to start somewhere. I would say sales rank is probably, and I would be interested to see if you agree. I would say sales rank is probably the most important thing to understand because eventually, it essentially tells you whether or not something is going to sell or how likely it's going to sell, how often it sells, things like that. So I'm curious, could you just break it down, complete beginner? What sort of sales ranks would you say are great benchmarks? CDs, DVDs, books, video games? What would you say?
Oh man, this is a loaded question. All right, so if somebody's brand new, we want to make sure this person makes money, right? So we
Uh-huh.
got, used book guy junior here. We want to make sure he's making money with his media business starting out. So sales rank, I'm going to keep him under 1 million in books every single time. You probably could even go a little bit lower, but I guess I'd like to live a little bit on, a little bit on the edge here. So 1 million is the highest you're going to go in book. Profit wise, you're going to have to be at least $6 profit minimum.
Okay.
I could even say that could go up to 8 or 10. The argument for that would be removal fees. You get a return, you got to have it sent back to you, the removal fee. I mean, you're basically going to break even if you send that book back in at that point. So
Right.
$6 minimum. That's for books. CDs, DVDs, they kind of go hand in hand. So you don't want to buy anything over 100K rank in CDs, DVDs. Profit wise, really depends on what you have in your area. So and like your buy cost, you have to take this into consideration too, right?
Right.
Because your stuff's going to be a lot more expensive than maybe just because of where you're located versus me. So you probably want to make at least $6 per DVD and $5 per CD, and it's you'll find a lot of CDs if you can get them for cheap because the fees are a lot less, right? The
Right.
comparison between those video games, it's kind of the same thing. You probably could go down to 75K in video games,
Okay.
but starting out video games is kind of tough because unless you're just going to focus on video games, getting a buy box for video games, I still don't have it. Unless you're focused in it, it's just you're not going to have the buy box. You're going to send stuff in. Yeah, it'll sell eventually, but it's one of those things where you kind of have to be focused starting out so you can get the buy box because the buy box is all the Amazon game revolves around. If you don't have the buy
Hmm.
box, if you're not eligible for it, it's brand new, you're not going to get the results. And I think a lot of people start Amazon, they expect to get all these sales, but the buy box can take, there's some people it's been over 9 months and they don't have the buy box in some
Yeah.
categories. So you really have to kind of start slow. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people like to jump headfirst in the media. And I think that's not the right thing to do. I think you should start slow, send in faster moving items so you can
Yeah.
get sales, you can get the buy box. And then once you get the buy box, then you can start sending in, maybe the stuff that takes a little bit longer to sell because you're actually buy box eligible.
Yeah, I would say it's great advice because in the beginning, when you're new, you have no track record with Amazon at all. Ultimately, you have to understand that Amazon's goal is to make sure the customer is happy. And the only way that they can know that is if you have some sort of history to suggest that you are somebody who's reputable and that people will be happy when they buy from you. So 100% agree that it's probably more about just getting as many sales as you can as quickly as you can. And maybe even, like you said, sending in stuff that's going to sell. So you said under 1 million rank and stuff like that.
When you started, did you even know what the buy box was?
I don't think so. It probably took I think it took me at least like 8 months to even understand what the buy box was, and yeah, I don't thinking back, I don't even remember how much I did know. I sold such random stuff back. I started in 2015. I actually was just looking at my first review, and I was like, "Dude, I used to be the wild, wild west back then." But yeah, things have changed a lot for sure, but like I said, it's one of those nuances that it's like things that if you've been in the game for a while, it's super obvious, and it's like, this is just way of life, but if you're someone who's new, there's all these little things that you have to learn along the way. So yeah, I say it's good advice. Get stuff that moves quickly. Try to become buy box eligible. It's gonna help a lot. Specifically with DVDs, most people are gonna be gated when they start. And you came out with a video how to get ungated in DVDs. I'm not sure if that included CDs as well, but included DVDs. And that was from christianbooks.com. My dad exclusively basically buys DVDs locally around our thrift stores, and he's been doing that for like 4 or 5 years. And when he got ungated back in the day, I want to say he spent like $300, and he had no idea what he was doing. I don't think he went on YouTube to figure it out. I think he ended up buying like 10 different copies from like three different sites until it worked. And so my understanding is that getting ungated has gotten easier over time. But I'm curious, where did you find that ungate from christianbooks.com? Was it somebody else, or how'd you come across that?
You're gonna laugh at this. I actually was just scrolling through on YouTube one day, and I seen like multiple different people kind of posting about getting ungated in DVDs, and it's always been on my radar. And like your dad, I mean, $300 was a deal. He got a deal for $300 because when I was looking, it was at least $1,000. So I
Yeah.
watched a few videos that were related to it. And there's people using Christian Book, and then there's some other, somebody, Amazon to Amazon, you could do things too. And I was just like, all right, I mean, well, let me just try this Christian Book thing, right? Because I'm cheap. $20 is nothing, right?
Yeah.
Whatever. If I lose $20, I lose $20, and it works. So I was like, well, I got to make a video because this is literally gonna bust the doors wide open for a lot of people, and I just did it, and it still works to this day. People are
Yeah.
still commenting on the video like, hey, I got ungated, and it's crazy to think, right? $20 can kind of double your business overnight because you're
Yeah.
gonna find DVDs where you find books, you're gonna find CDs where you find books and DVDs. So it's super cheap now. And if you're not ungated, I seriously think you got to get ungated. And who knows, right? Like you said, Amazon could stop taking invoices any single day from Christian Book, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, that's obsolete, and you're back to paying, $300, $1,000, whatever it's going to be from whatever website comes along.
Yeah, it's amazing how cheap it's gotten, but also I feel like it's gotten a lot easier to get ungated in general. But yeah, I mean, I actually got ungated from that YouTube video that you make. So I want to say, Mike, I appreciate it. Thank you, because I wouldn't be ungated in DVDs. Actually, I've just recently sent out a shipment of DVDs that I bought on Amazon to flip back on Amazon. So I'll let you know how that works, but I'm definitely gonna make a video on that if they actually sell, which I don't see why they wouldn't, because they're no different than books when it comes to looking at sales rank and looking at when they sell and stuff like that. So super excited for that. But I want to say I appreciate that. Now I'm curious. Deb, your wife, obviously has tagged along with you in some of your YouTube videos. She also has her own business, her own Etsy business. I'm curious, was she doing Etsy before you were selling? And also, what things have you learned from her side of the business that sort of translate over to Amazon?
The biggest thing I learned was you don't got to work for nobody but yourself. I'm working, 60-hour weeks at CVS, and she's at home working from home, right? She can take a lunch break when she wants to. She can pet the cats when she wants to. She can do what she can drink beer. If she wants to have a beer in the middle of her day, she can have a beer in the middle of her day. That was the biggest thing for me. And it kind of pushed me to say, wait a minute, if she can do this at home, then there's got to be some way I can turn my reselling into something that's serious. And I
Right.
was reselling before she started her business, and she just started messing around, doing little crappy toys when you look at it. But she started from home. She started with a little machine, kind of like when we started our reselling business. We started, with the cheapest stuff we could have, and you just build it into something. It takes time, like anything, but just being able to see somebody be successful with your own two eyes, it's different when you see somebody on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Oh, Joji's got a successful business. Well, I don't. Joji's not here next to me, right? I can't go to
Yeah.
his house and he can show me all of his fancy things he bought because with all the money he made from his business. But that's kind of what it was for me, right? Deb's at home. It's snowing outside. I got to leave an hour early to drive to work to make sure I get there in time. She's in the comfort of her pajamas, has a business at home, and is making more money than I'm making, and I got to get out and go through the snow. So that was kind of the biggest eye-opening thing for me was, wait a minute, there is something else here besides the rat race. And a lot of people kind of just get caught up. Oh, I just got to go to my job. And some people need that, honestly. Some people can't function as an entrepreneur because you got to hold yourself accountable. And if you don't
Wow.
have a boss to answer to, then, you kind of can just go off the rails. You can, just basically stop doing what you're supposed to do. And then before you know it, you're back to where you started. But with her building that business said, hey, if she can do it, I can do it. And that's
Yeah.
basically, motivated me to do it.
Yeah, thinking back to, I'm thinking, 50 years ago, 70 years ago, things were a lot different, like in terms of the way people used to work, because like media always went this way, like it always go at you, and there was no sort of creative content for an individual unless you were a part of some media company or you had skin in the game somehow, you knew people, like you're somebody's not just the general public. But as time has gone on and iPhones came out and YouTube has become a thing, the internet's become a thing, now there's like this, there's not just coming at you, but there's going this way. And I think probably the workforce in some way is transitioning away, like in a way towards that, where it's like instead of people always working for for the man, for the person, now it's people have an opportunity to go out and work for themselves. I'm curious, not really necessarily related, but you think long term, 30, 40, 50 years from now, most people are going to be working for themselves? Or do you think most people will still be working for bigger companies? Like, what do you think?
I think people will still be working for bigger companies. I think the discipline it takes to have your own successful business, anybody can start a business, but
Yeah.
those of us that are successful, it's probably a slim percentage of the overall number. I think people just need that schedule, the stability in their life. Sure, the people out there like us that are like, hey, let me just run with it, and you're fine with every day might be something different you got to tackle, and you build a business from that. But and honestly, most people are not going to be able to have a full-time business, make a full-time income from reselling. That's just the reality of it. I mean, you can sit out here and look at the YouTubers, but the YouTube resellers are only a small minority of resellers out there. How many
Yeah.
people, for every one person that's successful, I'd be curious, how many resellers do you think fail out of every one that's successful
On YouTube specifically or just in general?
in general?
Yeah, I would say like people who actually build a real business that they stick with and are consistent with for 5 years or more, probably like a 2% or something, like probably a very small percentage of people. Most people probably just do it on the side, which is kind of what I'm doing. Like my business is not necessarily like it's not my full-time gig. So I would say, yeah, it's shiny syndrome, like also as well, like you're on YouTube and you're like, wow, all these people doing it. It is a small percentage, I think, like you say.
I think everybody will try it.
Yeah.
I think going forward, kind of what you're talking about, I think everybody will try to kind of build their own business on the side, whether it's reselling, blogging, vlogging. There's so many different things out there now that you can pursue and try to, monetize basically to make some kind of income from. I think everybody at one point in their lives going forward is going to try something like that. The generations coming up, the kids in school now. I think it's because it's everywhere we look now. It's everywhere you look, there's some kind of content somewhere. And I think everybody will try it at one point in their life, but those that kind of stick with it and turn it into, their income, their main focus in when it comes to working, I think it's still going to be a lot less than people that are just out there working for companies, unfortunately. I mean, some people just need the structure, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
I mean, like yourself, right? You have a rewarding job, teaching kids, basically, raising kids, and the stuff you need people like we need Jojis, right?
I
You don't need
appreciate
used
it.
book guys that just live in their storage unit. You need people out there that are kind of raising the kids the right way, and you need that real life work experience. It's kind of tough, when I turned 16, it was, hey, Mike, you got to get a job right away. A lot
Yeah.
of that kind of doesn't exist in today's society anymore, and that's just the way things have changed naturally over time. So we still need, we need teachers, we need, firefighters, police officers, we need all these different things. So there's always going to be those group of kids growing up that's what they're going to do. And I think, the retail companies, Walmart, Amazon, they're only going to keep getting bigger here. A few of them might go away with time, but there's always going to be a need. I mean, go anywhere and there's self checkouts. Nobody likes using self checkouts. At
Yeah.
least not me, right? I'd rather deal with somebody person to person than trying to figure out the machine that's yelling at you to remove your item from the bag. So there's always going to be a need for people. And I think, like you said, even how you do reselling part time, I think a lot of retail workers will kind of just dabble in that part time just so they have extra money to supplement, whatever else they have going on.
Yeah, let's transition back to selling books, specifically the restock limits. So back last year, everyone got hit with restock limits. Basically said, hey, this is the maximum number of units you can send in. For a lot of media sellers, that meant couldn't send anything else in because you're past restock limits. I'm curious, how did you deal with that in your business? What was your first initial response to that? What did you change in your business to deal with that going forward?
Restock limits basically, I mean, at the end of the day, Amazon doesn't want 5,000 books sitting in their warehouse. So
Right.
when it happened to me, I was hovering right around 4,000 books. And basically, I couldn't send in books for, 5 months from whenever it started in September to whenever they lifted them in the middle of February. So you got to figure it out, right? You got to figure out what's going to work. What do you want to do, right? Because I don't want to be miserable. If I'm miserable doing this, there's no point in doing this. So merchant fulfilled. Last year, if you watch my videos, I say don't ever merchant fulfill a single thing. Well, restock limits kind of make you merchant fulfill because you can't send nothing in. So
Right.
my option was I could have took off, 5 months and kept getting paid because I still have inventory in there. I didn't go as hard as I should have because I never merchant fulfilled a single thing in my life. So this was basically a whole new business I was walking into. So I kind of took that time because I had the high inventory. I was still getting my payouts. The payouts basically stayed the same for, the most of the 5 months. And I took the time to kind of understand merchant fulfilled and try to figure out a plan where when restock limits happen this year, which they will, we can watermark this video for when it happens again. I don't even want to have to worry about restock limits. So that's why I kind of switched my whole business model from 100% FBA to basically 90% merchant fulfilled, 10% FBA. So, and the stuff I'm sending FBA is going to sell. It has a sell through rate, so it's not going to sit in there. So if I'm over 1,000 and the restock limits hit, my stuff's going to sell, and I continually replenish. As media sellers, you have to develop a business that's going to be sustainable. You don't want to have to change your business every 6 months, basically what Amazon's telling you with restock limits. It's just too much. I mean, restock limits suck and they're not going to go nowhere. I understand why Amazon has it. I mean, and if anybody out here is selling media and you're scanning media, you see some of the fools out there that are sending in stuff sitting in Amazon warehouse that hasn't sold in years, and they still have it sitting in their FBA collecting. And it's just, I mean, that's just part of Amazon doesn't want your stuff sitting in there if it's not going to sell. They're not a storage company. They want to sell it.
Right. And that makes sense to me. I'm curious, how many units do you have merchant fulfilled right now, like offered merchant fulfilled?
I think I'm a little bit under 1,000.
1,000. Okay.
My FBA is still over 1,000, and I cleaned out a lot of my FBA with the recent fee increases for the storage and the removal fees. I did clean out a lot of my inventory at the beginning of this year before they upped the fees. So right now I'm my FBA is it's there. Everything I send in sells fast, which I'm not used to, which is a good thing, right? I'm used to sending in stuff 1 e-score, 5 e-score. Now it's like nothing's under 20, so everything I'm sending in is selling. But merchant fulfill is really not as bad that people make it out to seem. But then again, people don't start Amazon to pack and ship their own stuff, right? Nobody says I'm going to start Amazon to be my own shipper, right? It's just most people say, well, I'm leaving eBay, so I don't have to ship every single order. But
that's true.
That's the reality of the media game. If you want to do media and you're going to do it kind of cherry picking style, then you're going to have to merchant fulfill. That's just the unfortunate reality of it. It's different for like what you're doing, right? You have higher flips. The items, sure, it takes a few months for some of your stuff to sell, but you have higher dollar returns. You're not out there, buying a book that's you're going to make $5 on. But if you're just going to be down in the trenches like me, then you got to merchant fulfill. I don't see any other way forward.
Yeah, and I actually really enjoy merchant fulfilling. I do merchant fulfill, and some of the reasons why I like to do that is when it's advantageous to do that. Sometimes when there's very few offers on that listing, so historically it might make sense to send it or to actually list it FBM, so you can take advantage of like this temporary period of time where there might be inflated demand and therefore you might get an inflated price. But honestly, the reason why I love merchant fulfilled the most is because you don't have to take pictures. Like on eBay, if you list something, not only do you have to ship it out, but you have to take pictures. It's fun to take pictures and things like that. But on Amazon, it's just super nice. And there's a stock photo, you just list it, and then you're on to the next game. Since you have both merchant fulfilled inventory and Amazon FBA inventory, do you use a repricer? And if so, like how is it different for both of those models?
I just use Reprice, the most simple one out there. I know there's, a million different repricers out there. Amazon software is like they're everywhere you look, there's a different software, but Reprice kind of keeps it simple. I'm not spending I'm not spending $20 on an item, right? I don't really have any really loss. If I'm spending $1.50, who cares if the price tanks? It's not a big deal for me. So you're really not doing like kind of what you're doing. That Reprice, it's fine. It's cheap. It's like $10 a month starting out. But I kind of keep it the same across the board. FBA, I don't want anything being repriced under $13. That's almost a break even for a book nowadays, especially if it's like a 1 pound, maybe pound and a half book. The same with merchant fulfilled. I keep it right at like, I think it's $8.99 plus $4 shipping. So it's basically the same across the board. And since I'm sourcing higher profit items than I was last year, the floor really doesn't affect me because the items I'm finding are usually more expensive items anyway. I'm not sending in, the $9, $10 CD or the $10 book anymore like I used to last year. Like it's one of those things you trade off volume for basically margin. And that's just, why not, right? I'd rather sell the amount of units you did and make the money you did versus selling 5,000 books and making what I did, because not only is it, the margin's better, it's less work. You don't have
Yeah.
to prep 5,000 books in a year, 6,000 books in a year.
Yeah, you definitely would need a whole team to do that, right? I mean, some of those bigger mega sellers are built off of literally just a whole bunch of labor doing that really cheap stuff, which in volume actually adds up to a lot of money. Back to the reprices. So reprice it. I think it's $10 a month. You said you basically have a floor minimum. What's your sort of rule with, you match the buy box, you undercut by penny? Like what is it that you do for the
If I
reprice?
was starting out and I didn't have the buy box, I would undercut the lowest FBA offer.
Okay.
But once you have the buy box, you can just match the buy box and it'll work fine for you. Last year, when I made my reprice it video at the beginning of last year, I said undercut the lowest FBA offer. And that's
Mhm.
great. You'll get the sales. The buy box will switch to you a lot. But you got to coincide with your trigger sets if you're out there scanning. So if you're going to go off the lowest FBA price, you're repricing, then your trigger set needs to be scanning off the lowest FBA price. You can't be
Yep.
scanning off the third highest and pricing at the lowest. That's just not going to work. So you kind of can do this any way you want. If you want your stuff to sit there longer, you can price off, maybe the second in line. And then when you're out
Yeah.
scanning, you're scanning for the second in line.
Right.
It's just whatever you're comfortable with. For me, with media, I feel like it can get cash flow intensive, right? If you have, 5,000 books sitting there, even if you pay $1 a piece, that's $5,000 you have tied up immediately. So my thought process is, listen, let's just keep turning the inventory. Even if we break even, we'll
Yeah.
take our dollar, spend it somewhere else, and turn that dollar into a $5 bill. And I think
Yep.
I think a lot of people kind of get, oh, if I just wait for this person to sell. Well, I mean, if I'm waiting for Joji to sell and Joji sells, but then there's three more Jojis that hop on the listing, you're never going to sell your item. I think a lot of
Right.
people get caught up trying to squeeze out an extra penny. With me, I'm just like, let's keep it moving, keep it going.
So what I would say, one of the things that I think I'm good at is being able to look at historical data, trying to figure out, is the current market price for this thing what it should actually sell for, or is it likely that it's inflated right now, or it's actually undervalued right now? And based upon that, I would then make the decision, hey, this is actually super cheap right now. It might even make sense to buy this on Amazon because the price theoretically should go up based upon past historical data. I'm just kind of curious. Obviously, I know that you don't have Keepa specifically, the subscription. I know you use Scoutly, and I know Scoutly has a Keepa graph. What sort of level of analysis are you doing with the books that you're picking up? Or is it literally just boom, floor price 13, I don't care, like you said, and just move it, just move inventory?
I mean, unless it's something that has a super crazy, you scan an item with a Scoutly or Scout IQ and it's like, oh, this book's going to make you $900 profit because some bozo's on the listing for $950, right? That's kind of when I'll do like the little bit of a deep dive like you're talking about.
Okay.
But other than that, I'm just going off the real-time data. I'm not doing any kind of historical analysis, anything like that. So, like what you do doesn't exist in my business model at all, unless it's something that I think is priced out of line. If somebody's selling a book for, $500, a DVD for $500, that's not correct, right?
Right.
Then you got to go in and take a look at the sales history, see where it was when it sold, maybe look up, comps on other websites, just so you kind of can get a realistic idea. Because a lot of people starting out, they're like, oh my God, I found a $500 book.
Yeah.
And we'll be sitting there and I'll be like, well, what's the ISBN? And we'll all pull it up like on the weekly Zoom call and we'll go look and I'll pull it up. I'm like, well, I mean, this sold for like $13, 8 months ago. But
Yeah.
the phone apps don't go back that far. And if
Right.
if you can't go back that far, you're just flying off what some crazy person decided to price their items at.
Yeah, I would agree completely. I think one of the models in the online book arbitrage space is to exploit the buy box, which would be to buy these really cheap MF offers where there's a big difference in price between lowest merchant fulfilled and the lowest FBA offer. And yeah, some of those softwares that do online book arbitrage, eFlips and arbitrage, master book flippers, I think generally that's the kind of goal, is to find those big gaps in price. And I would say I agree 100% that a lot of the times people absolutely have no idea what they're doing when they're listing stuff. And so just because something is $500 probably very rarely means it sells for that. There definitely are books that sell for $500, but it's going to come down to the Keepa analysis, or at least doing some Scoutly like Keepa analysis on your phone app. Now I want to transition to DVDs because something that I'm really interested in. I use the Keepa deals page, the product finder, track product alert on Keepa to find undervalued books. I can also apply it to DVDs, but one of the things that kind of holds me back is the whole counterfeit issue. Like, I know there are significant number of DVDs that are counterfeited. What would you say are the things that you're looking for if you come across a new DVD or maybe even a used DVD that might be like a telltale sign, hey, this is probably not real?
The seal on the DVDs. I know it sounds dumb to say like, oh, if I grab a DVD, I can tell if the seal is legitimate or not. It just comes with experience.
Hmm.
Usually with the DVDs up top, like they're folded over. There's like plastic that's folded over here,
Okay.
and it's like folded in half, and it'll have like the little, so you have like a little triangle on the side here where
Uh-huh.
it's folded over.
Right.
That's a sign that it's legitimately sealed. If you have one of the ones where it's like kind of sealed on the side all the way, and
Yeah.
it's like got the little line there of the
Uh-huh.
cellophane, then probably Joji probably saran wrapped it in his basement, right? But I mean, with anything in Amazon, right? There's risk with anything we do.
Right.
You just have to kind of roll with it. You're going to get hit with counterfeit claims. There's nothing we can do. You just don't want to get in a situation where you have multiple, right? You have to kind of be
Right.
paying attention to what you're doing, especially with the new stuff.
Right.
You just have to kind of get your feet wet, get out there, go to Walmart and look at new DVDs, go to
That's
anywhere
good.
and look
Yeah.
at new DVDs and see what the seals look like. They're going to look the same. It's not like Walmart seals their DVDs differently than, Big Lots or Best Buy. It's kind of the same across the board. So you
Right.
understand what you're looking at, and it feels cheap. If you grab a DVD and it's sealed by like somebody, it's going to feel like really cheap, like basically Easter basket cellophane wrap versus
Right.
kind of the stuff that's a little bit more stretchy, the actual stuff.
Yeah, that's really great advice to actually just go to retail stores and look. I didn't even think about that, but that's like the most logical thing to do, and that makes a lot of sense. Now, specifically counterfeit claims, I'm sure you probably have gotten one in your career. I've definitely gotten a couple in my career. It was a major headache back in 2021 when that happened to me. My account got suspended because I got 3 counterfeit claims literally within a week worth of time. I got test spied out by a big, basically a big law firm that works with 3 major publishing companies. So that was very unfortunate for me. But I'm curious, when you or if you have got a counterfeit claim, what is your sort of process for responding to that?
You can reach out and see if they'll you can reach out to the brand owner and see if they're willing to remove it. If you say, hey, I'm not going to sell the product anymore, I apologize. And you kind of can just basically own up to everything, and hopefully they take it away. But I mean, in today's world, most of them aren't going to, just because the way Amazon is, right? There's so
Right.
many new sellers signing up for Amazon every
Right.
day, and that's why we run into these counterfeit claims, because there's so many people that really aren't doing things legitimately. And the only thing you really can do is reach out, say, hey, Amazon's not going to do nothing for you, because your retail store receipt, sure, you might get lucky and they might take it, but your thrift store receipt definitely is not going to work, even if it's a used item. You just got to
Right.
let it fall off your account. Unfortunately, there's really no other way besides reaching out, seeing if they'll get rid of it. And
Right.
sometimes the email addresses they give, like for you to reach out to the brand, it's not even one you can email. So you're kind of just you got to kind of weigh your options here. And as a new seller, you got to be a little bit more cautious. I would recommend, if you're unsure about something, just reach out to somebody. There's so many people out there that'll answer a DM. If you feel
Right.
like, oh, this is fishy, then say, hey, look, here's a picture of this DVD. Does it look legitimate? And another thing you can do is, when you're listing, I've done this, is make sure it's not just like, make sure it's just not Sony on the listing, right? If it's just Sony and Amazon,
Right.
steer clear of it. I think that's kind of
Yeah.
like a good tip to give. You probably have more insight with this. Like, do you run into textbooks where it's just a publisher on the listing?
Actually, there are some cases. There are some cases when that's true. Very small publishers. Generally, we don't. But I know in just the traditional online arbitrage world, that's kind of like one of the key things is, hey, make sure the brand isn't selling that item, because it's probably more likely they can give you an IP complaint. And one of the other reasons is looking at the new offer count on the actual Keepa graph, and if you see like new offer count is going up like this, and then boom, drops off a cliff from like 15 to 0 or 15 to 3, then that probably is an IP like was sent out to a whole bunch of sellers. So yeah, I was just kind of curious to see, because I was just kind of curious to see how you would deal with that, because again, I would like to get into DVDs. There's tons of opportunities. I'm looking at Keepa deals, and there's like, okay, here's a DVD that will sell in used condition, maybe only 12 times a year, but every time over 40 or $50. And then all of a sudden today, someone listed at $4.99 plus shipping. It's like, why wouldn't I buy that and wait 3 months and sell for 50, right? So there's tons of opportunity. So that's why I'm asking those questions. I'm curious. This is kind of just a more general Amazon question. Amazon obviously wants people like us to sell on their platform, even though they have to make it seem like they don't want people like us on our platform, because we make them tons and tons of money, because we're essentially all the thrift stores in America just reselling stuff, and they make a small percentage of every sale. So with the restrictions and the gating where they try to make it appear less friendly, like curious what your thoughts are. What do you think is going on in the background in the headquarters? Are they like secretly going like, how do we make it just just easy enough so that they can still do it? What do you think?
I think we're going to get to a point here where probably the next few years there's really not going to be that many more bad players on Amazon, because Amazon doesn't play the games other platforms do, right? They
Right.
catch you drop shipping, that's it. Thank you for your inventory, thank you for your money. Have a good day. We're keeping everything, and that's just. And other platforms, maybe eBay, they're like, well, here's a warning, here's this, here's that.
Yeah.
Amazon's getting more stricter, and as new sellers, it's just something you have to deal with, right? Like you said, it's not the Wild West anymore. And I think it's a good thing, right? For honest players that you're doing this honest. Sure, you're always going to get a counterfeit claim. Every single person that ever sells on Amazon, seriously, over a year of time, you're probably going to get a counterfeit claim. It's not the end of the world, right? It happens
Yeah.
from time to time. There's nothing you can do about it. But I do think Amazon, they need us, but they don't need all the headaches they have that come with some of these people that try to do things shady ways. And unfortunately, that's just the reality of it, right? I've even seen it on YouTube where people will saran wrap their books and sell them as new, and they're literally thrifted books. I mean, and
Uh,
that's out there for people to see. So if somebody doesn't know better and they start out, can you blame them for buying a shrink wrap machine and doing it themselves, because they're watching this person on YouTube that says they're doing it? So it's kind
yeah.
of like a double-edged sword. But I do think Amazon does need us, and I think it is going to continue to get harder when it comes to gates and categories and
Yeah.
things like that. And I mean, you even see with some of these companies that a lot of online sellers have been using to get ungated. They've been returning their items, right? It's
Oh my
one of my
gosh.
biggest pet
Why?
peeves.
Everyone know.
Yeah, and that's what they do. So now the websites have to put in these claims where, hey, you can't return your items. We're not doing any kind of Amazon invoices, and that's just a little kind of inside look to what Amazon deals with every single day, with probably millions of sellers that are doing things they shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, 100% agree. We're almost at an hour here. I kind of want to transition. I know that one of the reasons why you got started, going back to the interview you did with me on your channel, was you just wanted, for financial security, you just want to make a little extra money in the case that any of your pets, like Diana, had a vet bill that, hey, you get a little extra money to pay for. Obviously, you transitioned into full time and you're doing that full time. And a lot of people out there are probably in the same boat. They're in the 9 to 5, they're doing this part time, they're seeing some success. What will it take for them to take that leap of faith and actually just go full time?
You need the money. I mean, at the end of the day, if you can't leave. I can't leave CVS
Yeah,
for eBay and Amazon if I'm making half of what I'm making at CVS, right?
right,
In your career, whether it's working for somebody else, you always want to be climbing the ladder when it comes to salary. So
right,
it takes time. Listen, I worked at CVS for 10 miserable years. What's another 6 months of working on the side and building this up to the point where you could just leave one day? So I know
right,
everybody's like, oh my God, I want to go full time right away, right away. Slow it down a little bit, build it
yeah,
up the correct way. And when the day comes, you can be like me, and in the middle of your shift, you can leave your keys in the office and say, that's it, and you never have to come back. And there's no stress because I already built it up on the side. I know the results I'm going to get because these are the results I'm getting. And I'm not even putting in full time effort, but the money was there. So it's like, hey, you can comfortably walk away. You're not worried about any kind of, any worried about debt or anything like that, second guessing yourself. You got to be smart about the decision. I know it's fun. I know going to thrift
right.
stores, reselling's fun. You might flip some stuff for crazy amounts of money, but you have to make sure you have the foundation there, because you don't want to walk away and then 6 months later I'm going back to CVS knocking on the door. Hey, can I have my job back? Like, I didn't want to be that way. So be smart
Yeah,
about it. And if that means having a 6 month, a year plan, and you still have to work at your crappy job, who cares? It's only 6 months to a year, and that'll motivate you even more. I mean, I was more never motivated as much as I was when I was at CVS to get out of there. Like, that was the
right.
biggest motivation for me. So, leverage that and build it the right way. And when you have the money, you can just say, "Hey, I'm not coming into work today or ever again."
Yeah, I think that's wonderful advice. Start slow. I feel like all the gurus and everyone out there who makes it look super easy is kind of sells a dream of like, let me quit my job today or tomorrow and then let's go do it. In reality, it's really just effort and consistent effort over time that's going to lead to results, like you said. And clearly, you've documented that on your channel. Literally, if you started back at episode 1 or video 1, you would see your growth both in your ability to make YouTube videos, but then also in the sort of way that your Amazon business has grown. So now I want to say thank you so much, Mike, for spending time with us on the channel. I think a lot of people got value out of it. Where could people find you if they don't know who you are or where to find you right now?
UsedBookGuy on YouTube. That's my main outlet. I really am not big on any other social medias. I kind of just stick to YouTube. And yeah, the UsedBookGuy over on YouTube. You'll see all my videos from years and years ago. Funny story, the used book guy on YouTube almost went away early on. I left my GoPro on the hood of my car, leaving a thrift store, and I drove to the next thrift store. I realized I didn't have my GoPro.
Oh my
I went
gosh.
back. I couldn't find the GoPro. Believe it or not, somebody actually found my GoPro, a runner on the side of the road, picked up my GoPro, watched the intro I recorded,
Uh-huh.
seen the magnet on the side of my car, and reached out to me through that.
That's crazy. So
That was
that
it.
magnet paid for itself right there.
I would have never. I probably would have gave up on YouTube because it was early on. Honestly,
That's
it's
crazy.
crazy story
Yeah.
ever. But yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. It's funny how these little things, like I'm not sure how significant or insignificant they are, but they all add up to tell everyone's story. And sometimes you wonder if I just took that one left turn instead of right turn, how your life would be different. But at the end of the day, it's like everyone makes the decision. Everyone ends up funneling somewhere. So, I guess we're probably here because we're meant to be here. But I want to say thank you so much for your time, Mike. This is super valuable for me. And for everyone else, you want to learn how to sell books on Amazon by buying them on Amazon, flipping on Amazon. Then you can check out these videos. If you want to learn how to buy books on eBay from Mike, the used book guy, and then flip them on Amazon for a profit, then you can check out this video here. All right, guys, have a good one and goodbye. Right, dude.